Throughout my 3,000 plus hours of playing Rocket League, I've learned a lot about what you should and shouldn't do if you're trying to rank up. At the end of the day, I think that's what we all want, right? Is to rank up. It's the only concrete value we can tie to our improvement. So today, I'm going to show you 32 mistakes that you're probably making when you play Rocket League. Let's get started. Mistake number 1 is only using unlimited boost in free play. This is one of the most invisible mistakes you can make because there's no immediate backlash for doing it. It's something that holds you back over time. For me personally, I never really messed around with unchecking this box here in the settings until I was around champion. Once I did that and I realized how much slower I was in free play, I immediately knew there was an issue. So if you haven't done it in a while, turn off unlimited boost in free play for the next few days. It'll force you to be more mindful of your boost usage when you're practicing your mechanics. You'll be thanking yourself later when you're in a real game and you barely have enough boost to reach that double tap. Mistake number 2 is overfilling boost. This is the idea of collecting more boost from a pad than you have room for. Obviously, overfilling your boost isn't a bad thing in itself. You don't get penalized for it or anything, but it's a sign for a lot of people that you're leaving the play more often than you need to. A lot of players tend to already be thinking about the next boost pad they'll be going for, even if they still have 50 boost in the tank. This is a bad mentality because you can get to pretty much any ball already with the 50 boost you already have, and you can get back up to 86 boost within a couple seconds most of the time by just collecting 3 mini pads. The only time you should consider overfilling your boost on purpose is if you're trying to starve your opponents. Other than that though, a good rule to follow is to try and keep your total boost overfill to the smallest amount you can. Mistake number 3 is improvising too much. What I mean by this is specifically about mechanics and most often in training. I tend to see a lot of players try and set up a shot where they don't have anything particular in mind. Then once the time comes where they do have to shoot it, they just shoot it in whatever way they find easiest or most comfortable. This way of thinking makes the improvement process way slower. If you're just doing shots based on whatever feels most comfortable when the moment comes, you won't be learning anything particular that fast. In a real game, you'll be forced to hit specific types of shots in specific moments. So when you're practicing in free play and you decide to take it up the wall, make sure you have a specific plan in your head before you actually do it. This will apply positive and negative reinforcement more accurately in your brain. This leads me into the next mistake, which is not practicing something specific. When you're warming up, it's okay to just go in free play and practice all sorts of stuff. You're just trying to get used to all the movements your car could make, and that's totally fine. But when you're actually trying to train and get better and not just warm up, you should always be practicing a specific mechanic or skill. Just going in and practicing aerial control in general can only get you so far. Once you reach a certain point, you need to start practicing specific skills like 45-degree flicks or double taps from the sidewall. You'll notice a lot of these skills overlap as you practice them too. Like when you practice air dribbles for a bit, wall aerials become easier for you. It all revolves around the idea of building up your skill set so you have more options in a real game. Mistake number 5 is boost then brakes. Something almost all of us are guilty of at one point or another is boosting to go for the ball and then hitting the brakes immediately after because you changed your mind. This is a telltale sign of hesitation. If you're not sure if you're going for the ball or not, just don't boost yet. It's okay to boost in preparation for reading a touch if you're trying to build up your momentum for wherever you decide to go, but you don't just hit the brakes after deciding not to go for it. If you decide not to go for it, you use that momentum you just created to go somewhere else, often rotating behind. Boosting then hitting the brakes is not only bad because you're wasting boost, but it's also bad because you're killing your momentum at the same time. If you don't boost or hit the brakes at all in the same scenario, you could be in the exact same spot on the field, but with more boost and a little bit of momentum to work with. Mistake 6 is defending your own net after kickoff. This particular mistake does have some wiggle room because if you're solo queuing and gold and your teammate just did a horrible kickoff that pinched into your own net, it's kind of hard to blame you for wanting to go back to net in case that happens again. However, if you're in platinum or diamond or above, sure, this pinch right in your net might happen every so often, but what happens more often is that your teammate gives you a nice pass that you can follow up. And you wouldn't be able to follow up nearly as easy if you're turning back to your net each time. By the time you reach a certain rank, it's much more beneficial to turn upfield in case of a follow-up. At the end of the day, if it pinches straight in your net, that's your teammate's fault who did the kickoff, not yours. Mistake 7 is flipping without a destination. A good rule I like to follow when deciding if I should flip or not in a situation is whether or not I have a specific destination I'm trying to get to. So in this situation, my intended destination is the back post. I know for sure that's where I'm going no matter what happens next in this play. I can tell I have plenty of room to flip before I get there, so that's exactly what I do to help me get a little extra speed. In this situation, however, I don't have an intended destination yet. I'm still waiting to see what happens in this play before I decide where I'm going next. Therefore, this is not a good time to flip. So I stay grounded and wait to see what happens next. Similarly, mistake number 8 is turning on car cam as a collision is about to happen. A collision is defined as a point in a match where multiple outcomes can occur. So it could be a 50-50, a pass, a shot opportunity, an attempted solo play, or anything else like that. All of these are examples of collisions because you don't know what the outcome will be. A collision usually happens every few seconds in a game, depending on the skill and speed of the players. So when a collision is about to happen in a game, don't take your eyes off the play by going on car cam. Let me show you this example again, but completely black out the screen to make it more dramatic. Not so comfortable to watch now, is it? So the point is, don't take your eyes off the play when something is about to happen. Mistake number 9 is watching RLCS to improve your decision making. There's multiple potential problems with watching RLCS to help you make better choices, but there's 2 main ones that are most important. The first one is that, assuming you're not pushing for SSL, these pro players are making their decisions based on mechanics and consistency that you don't have yet. Let's face it, most of us aren't even close to having the mechanics of a pro player. So a lot of their decisions should be different from yours. The other reason is the fact that they're in comms with each other and you can't hear them. A lot of the time, these players will make a decision based purely on a call out from their teammate. It's unfair for you to expect yourself to make a decision like that when you're just solo queuing. So overall, if you're trying to improve your decision making by watching other people's gameplay, stick to watching people who are just a few ranks higher than you. Mistake 10 is not power sliding enough. I first got this idea when someone in my Twitch chat asked if I power slide often. I of course said yes, and then I called out whenever I was power sliding for the next 30 seconds, even if it was just for a moment. It's often hard to tell if someone is power sliding just by looking at their gameplay, because a lot of the time it's just a tiny tap, but that tiny tap makes all the difference. I'd highly recommend tapping it more than you are currently. It's like a secret tool for getting out of awkward spots, even if you're only pressing it for a short moment. After all, the pros press power slide twice as often as diamond players do. And on top of that, when they do press it, on average, it's only for 1/10 of a second. These are real stats, by the way, from ballchasing.com. Mistake number 11 is not hitting subscribe. Nah, I'm just kidding, but you should hit subscribe though. Mistake 11 is always going for a big pad after kickoff. Immediately after doing a kickoff, it's our natural instinct to go for a large boost pad because we are left completely out of boost. However, when you lose the kickoff and the other team is about to start an attack, you often don't have time to grab a big pad and then get back in the play. Fortunately, there's this nice curved mini pad path that you can collect that leads you straight back to defending your own net. I'd recommend using this path instead of going for a big pad when you lose possession, since it doesn't take you out of the play and you don't need 100 boost to make a save. Mistake number 12 is waiting for the opponents to come to you. Sometimes it happens. The opponents get possession and you're left back on defense alone to stop their attack. But instead of sitting in net like a helpless deer in the headlights, you should immediately try and close that gap and shadow the opponents as early as possible. This is much better because the opponents feel threatened during their entire push, which makes them more likely to mess up, and you can also turn and challenge at any point if you find them vulnerable. On top of this, even if you do have a teammate behind you, you still shouldn't wait for the opponents to come to you, because having 2 people in net trying to make a save is much worse than having 1 person challenging the play and 1 person defending the net. Mistake 13 is only doing one-touch plays. What this means is when the ball comes your way, you shouldn't default to just hitting it in a certain direction with 1 touch. You should always at least consider corralling the ball and then sending it away. Most often, you can use this strategy when the opponents are giving you a ton of space. You should be using that space to your advantage. So basically, when you have space, keep the ball close until you don't. When you don't have space, you should be sending it away as quickly as possible. Mistake number 14, leaving your team alone. This mistake is most obvious when your team is on defense and you go all the way to the opponent's half to grab boost. That's definitely not a good choice. But what's also not a good choice is doing the same when your team is on offense. When you go all the way back for boost while your team still has pressure, that's basically you saying that you're fine with giving up that pressure that you worked so hard for. If you find yourself in 2-on-1 or 3-on-1 situations often, it could be because you're doing this. At the end of the day, going back on defense while your team is on offense is still leaving your team in a 2v3, so don't do that. Mistake number 15 is going for squishy saves. For those that don't know, a squishy save is when you drive up the back of the goal off the roof and try to save it from there. It looks super cool, but it's not that good of a strategy. The only time going for a squishy save is better than a normal save is if you're already positioned poorly in net. Something went wrong for you to be in that situation in the first place. So the only time you should be doing this is if you already made a mistake related to bad positioning, or if you were trying to dodge someone's demo. You should never purposely go for a squishy save when you can easily make a normal one. Mistake 16 is sitting at the midfield. Don't get me wrong, the midfield is a very powerful spot to be at when you're making an offensive push. But don't just sit there and wait. Keep the flow of rotations going. Often what happens when you sit at midfield for too long is a defender will rotate in from behind and just demo you. So if you notice your opponent's making this mistake, try to punish it by opening up that area. If you do find a demo there, it often leads to an easy counterattack. Mistake 17, going for every pass you're given. It's a common misconception that you should go for a shot every time a teammate passes it mid. You can probably blame those guys that spam take the shot all the time for that. But it's actually your responsibility in this situation to decide if you should go for the shot or not. Just because your teammate passes it mid doesn't mean you have to go for it. It's still your job to make sure it's safe to push. The biggest thing to think about when deciding if you should push or not is how fast your teammate's recovery will be. If it'll be really slow, you should probably think twice before committing. But if they can recover fast, it's most often safe to push. Mistake 18 is going front post when no one is behind you. If you're in charge of defending the net from a shot all on your own since your teammate isn't rotating back yet, the best place to defend the net at is from the back post. At a low level, you should only push up to the front post if your teammate is rotating behind you to take your spot. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly suggest you check out the video card in the top right of your screen. After you watch that, your defense will improve tremendously without even needing to practice any mechanics. Mistake number 19 is blaming your teammates. When you're in the ranked mindset of win at all costs, it's very easy to throw blame around, especially if you're solo queuing. However, this is a very short-term mentality. The easiest way to rank up is by actually making yourself a better player. Bad teammates will happen over time, but so will good teammates. Overall, it ends up balancing out to you being at the rank that you belong. You're not abnormally unlucky with how often you get bad teammates. Trust me, if you think you are, you're just wrong, and that's the way it is. Mistake number 20 is pushing in as third man. If you know how to rotate, whether you realize it or not, when you move on to offense, you're probably moving into these three positions. One player in the corner, one player at midfield, and one player backing them up. If you're this player, you're the third man, which means you're the last line of defense. You should never push in to go for this shot when your teammate is already in position. The only time pushing in here is okay is if your teammate is out of position, somewhere way back here. But if they're in the right spot, please don't ever push in for the shot like this. I see it happen all the time. Mistake 21, positioning yourself for only one outcome. This is something that you can especially learn from in twos. In twos, the player without the ball often needs to be in a position for a pass and also to recover back quickly. You need to find that neutral zone to where you're available to do both depending on what happens. So don't just go all in for the pass. If you do, that pretty much gives the other team a free goal if you don't score right then and there. But also don't just position yourself way back behind. That makes it way harder to score since your teammate has two defenders to get by all on his own. Position yourself in a good neutral spot where you can help both ways depending on what happens. Mistake 22 is making your decision before the collision. That actually sounds kind of cool. This goes back to turning off ball cam at the wrong time. If a collision is about to happen, in most plays, it's much better to just wait to see what happens before making your decision. Saving that extra half second by making your decision before the collision is going to end up biting you in the back more often than it actually helps. When you do this, you're basically guessing what the outcome is going to be. Just wait for the collision to happen and then choose. Don't try to do it before. Mistake number 23, air rolling to the wrong side on air roll shots. This is something I see people do wrong at every single rank. When they go for a shot that has a tough angle, they try and air roll to make the angle possible. Only thing is, sometimes they air roll the wrong direction and don't even realize it. To put it simply, if you're trying to angle it to the left, you should air roll to the right and flip to the left. If you're trying to angle it to the right, you should air roll to the left and flip to the right. That is hands down the most consistent way to hit air roll shots. Mistake 24, forfeiting too early. Most often, if you're getting clobbered by the opponents, you shouldn't forfeit at all, really. If you're getting beaten by a lot, you can probably learn something from it. It's good experience. When you start a vote to forfeit a match, that's basically you saying you only care about your rank right now and just want to move on to the next game without learning anything. The only time you should forfeit if you're actually trying to improve is if your teammates are literally throwing on purpose or just not playing at all. At that point, it's just a waste of time and you can't learn anything from it, so forfeiting is understandable. Mistake 25, double jumping on touches where you can flip. When you're doing a power shot, doing a single jump and then flipping is always the best choice. Sometimes I see players double jump into the ball just because they're worried that they won't hit it at all, so they want to make sure they can at least get a touch on it. You might miss a few times when you're first trying to learn those tough reads, but in the long term, it's much better to flip into the ball for power shots whenever you can. It makes your recovery faster, gives you more power, and allows you to place it easier. Mistake 26 is going for the ball as soon as you spawn. This is something I hardly ever hear talked about, but it's really important. When you get demoed, that is the only point of RNG in the game. Your teammates have no clue what side you're going to spawn on. So they're just going to assume you spawn on the furthest side from the ball and just continue rotating normally. It just wouldn't make sense for them to count on you spawning on a particular side when no one can control that. If you spawn right near the ball and decide to go for it instantly, that causes a ton of confusion a lot of the time. The only time this is okay is if your teammates are nowhere near the play. Mistake 27 is trying to make up for your mistakes. Let's be real, there are a lot of mistakes listed in this video, and most of these aren't even about mechanics. Mistakes will happen at one point or another, but just because it happens doesn't mean you have to make up for it. I've played with friends before that immediately feel like they have to make up for a mistake they just made, but in turn, it ends up just making things even worse. Then it just snowballs from there. If you make a mistake, that should not influence you to make up for it at all or play in a different style. Just play how you would as if that mistake never happened. Mistake 28, jumping straight into ranked. If you don't warm up at all before you play online matches, you're putting yourself at a huge disadvantage. I warm up almost every time I play, but the few times I don't, I can easily see the difference in my performance. It's super easy, just spend like 20 minutes in free play before you actually jump into real matches. Mistake 29, worrying about your rank. Wait a minute, that's why we're all here, aren't we? We all want to rank up, right? Well, yes, that's true, but the best method of ranking up is really not thinking about your rank. If your main focus is improving your positioning or getting better at specific mechanics, your rank will come as a result. When you're setting your goals, it's a much better mental decision to set a goal related to improving a certain aspect of your game rather than trying to reach a certain rank by a certain time. When you set a rank as your goal, that's where you start blaming your teammates for throwing individual games. It happens to the best of us. Mistake 30, always shooting on net. When you have possession and you're about to take a shot, but it's not quite open, it's often best to purposely miss the net by a little bit. This sounds counterintuitive, but the purpose is to allow your teammate to follow it up. I know, trusting your teammates can be hard, but if the defender has the save no matter where you shoot it on net, you can't really go wrong with trying to bait them out for going for a save. Your teammate will have a much better chance at scoring an open goal than you will at scoring a perfectly defended one. Mistake number 31 is making the executive decision with limited information. This is a very broad mistake that can be applied to a ton of situations, but here's one example. If I'm heading back and can only see half of the play, whereas my teammate that is already back can see the entire play, it's usually better to let him decide to go or not. So whatever he does, I do the opposite. If he goes, then I'm rotating behind. If he stays back, then I'll go. Since he can see the entire play, he's more likely to make the right decision than I am. So if you find yourself in a spot like this, check to see what your teammate will do and then make your decision after. And the final mistake, mistake number 32, is doing advanced variations before you've mastered the basics. This can also be applied to many things related to mechanics and positioning. For mechanics, you shouldn't learn to do spinning air dribbles if you haven't mastered how to do them with only slight air roll adjustments. Same thing goes for any other mechanic. For positioning, you shouldn't already be trying to cut front post if you haven't mastered back post rotations yet. You should master the basic set of rules and then learn when it's okay to break those rules. That's the best way to learn, and you can apply this mentality to almost anything in Rocket League. That is going to be it for the video. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to see more, be sure to subscribe. And if you want to check out my Twitch, I stream every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 p.m. PST. That link will be in the description. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.